Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new real-life car review. In this episode I'm driving the updated Nissan Juke. The current model generation of the Nissan Juke was introduced in 2019 and now 5 years in, Nissan gave this car a thorough technical update. That means that they didn't change much to the exterior styling, however they made significant updates to the interior and the interior technology. So in this review I want to find out what this car is all about. And as per usual, we start off by having a peek under the hood. Over here the Nissan Juke is available with two drivetrain options, namely a 1-liter turbocharged engine with 117 horsepower and 180 newton meters of torque, which can deliver 200 newton meters of torque in a temporary overboost function. That 1-liter engine can be made into a 6-speed manual transmission or a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. This is the 1.6 hybrid. I've tested this before and I'll quickly go over the highlights of this engine, of this drivetrain. The petrol engine itself is a 1.6 16-valve engine. It's a pretty uncomplicated old school engine, but it helps the reliability and longevity of this engine, and it's made it to a very special transmission which forms the hybrid part. It's a 4-speed unsynchronized transmission with two electric motors. There's a 15 kilowatt motor that acts as the starter generator that does also the main electricity generation under regenerative braking, and there's a 36 kilowatt main drive electric motor. As said, this is an unsynchronized gearbox, so in order to be able to shift the gears you have to match the speed of the gears and the shafts inside it, and that's done by the two electric motors, and that enables it to do very quick and very seamless gear shifts. Must say that the 4 gears have to cover the entire speed range from standstill to its top speed of 166 kilometers an hour, and that can mean that you can hear the engine rev up under harder acceleration, especially in the speed range from 120 kilometers an hour. It has to shift between third and fourth gear. As said, you don't feel anything from the gear shifts, but you can hear the engine rev up. But the engine itself has a nice tone to it, and the noise insulation of this car is also pretty good. I'll talk more about the fuel economy in the drive segment. As I said, this is very tried and true technology. Old school engine, fairly uncomplicated, so I expect it to last a long time. When I opened the door of this car I saw the small label for the service records, and it says that service intervals are at 30,000 kilometers. And in my professional opinion that's way too long. If you plan to keep this car long term, if you're a private buyer of this car, I'd suggest you do the oil changes and service interval at 15,000 kilometers and never ever go with a 30,000 kilometer service interval. Just change your oil more frequently, and then this engine, this drivetrain will last you a long time. Because I also know that there are very little problems with the transmission part, which forms the hybrid part of this drivetrain. This is very reliable. It may be somewhat of an oddball with a 4-speed non-synchronized transmission, but it is reliable technology that drives really well. Oh, and by the way, it's powered by a 1.2 kilowatt hour battery that lives underneath the trunk floor. So let's head over there. So you can't see anything of the hybrid battery that lives underneath here. The Juke has a double cargo floor, and the cargo floor itself is nice and level with the opening, and it holds two stand-size shopping crates with the floor in its highest position. Underneath here is a nice large area where you can store smaller things or stuff that you don't need while you're traveling. Nice shape. It has a one-piece parcel shelf, so if you have taller stuff, yeah, you have to leave this at home. You can't really stow this away that easily. But anyway, let's quickly go through the numbers. If you have the non-hybrid version of the Juke, you get a larger cargo space. With the rear seats up, that's 422 liters, and with the rear seats down, that's 1305 liters. As said, the hybrid battery lives underneath here, and it consumes up to 70 liters of cargo space. So in the hybrid version you have a remaining cargo area of 354 liters with the rear seats up, and when you fold the rear seats down you have a remaining cargo area of 1237 liters. but I will say this is a very nicely shaped cargo area. It's nicely upholstered, it's very neatly done all by all. Let's quickly fold the rear seats down so you can see how practical this is. Floor is not completely flat, but you can really get large stuff in here, especially thanks to the large opening, and that these parts, the plastic parts of the panels, don't protrude too much inwards, so you can really get larger stuff in here. Very nice cargo space. Anyway, I'm gonna close up and let's have a peek in the interior so you can see what the updated interior is all about. I've said it before and I will probably say it a couple of times again, but Nissan really spends their money where it matters most to their customers, and that's in the interior. I always find Nissan interiors very well designed and a very nice place to be. So I recently drove the Toyota Yaris Cross, and when you get out of that car into this is 2 steps up in terms of design, build quality and material use. Let me get the action cam and show you around what's new. So first and foremost, this entire section of the dashboard is new. We now have a digital gauge cluster. We now have a larger infotainment screen. The connectivity surfaces are updated, and let's put that in mode, in home mode. Yeah, it's very simple to use, and also this screen is now tilted towards the driver. It protrudes more into the interior, so it's within easy reach, this touch screen. But it has 2 downsides. One is that we do not have those nice 3 circular vents anymore, which I found a very nice design feature in the interior of the Juke. And also, since this protrudes much more inward, it now blocks the view on the climate control display. So from my driving position I cannot read the temperature setting, and also I cannot see the indicators for the heated seats, which is a bit of a bummer. Yeah, you can tell that they are on, but it would be nice to be able to see them. On the plus side is this little button over here, and this is the heated windscreen, which is fairly unique in this class of vehicle, and in this trim level, it's standard on the car. That is a very nice thing to have. Here you now have a wireless charger, and the buttons for the e-pedal and the EV are now clustered together on the center console. And nice thing about the auto hold function is that when you have it activated, it remains active even when you stop and restart the car again. In other cars you have to restart it every time. Another thing that I like, and I cannot demonstrate it right now because the engine would start and you can't hear me, is this button here. Now, when I push this little button here, I can activate my preferred settings for the driver assist systems. And now I have it switched on, and you can see, I hope it shows, that the lane departure warning is off and the overspeed warning is off. So by single push of the button, and that's very nice to have. Let's switch off the car again, have a quick look at the materials. You now have this nice material on the dashboard, and in this version this is the N Sport with the iconic yellow body color. You get this nice trim and this nice yellow stitching. It reminds me somewhat of wetsuits. This is really nice. And also the seats have that yellow segment in there. This version comes with the optional Bose audio system with speakers and the headrest, and it's designed to look like a bit like a headphone. Nice design touch, a bit gimmicky, but it's fun. The Bose audio system is on the heavier side, bass heavier side of things, so when you like to listen to classical music you really have to dial back the bass of the equalizer a little bit. Back to the seats, it has the Juke logo embossed in there. Nice seats, they are nice and large, limited adjustability, but the seating comfort, as said, is just great. Okay, another thing that I want to point out is the ergonomics of this interior. One thing that I specifically like is that you have important physical buttons everywhere. So for instance, if those screens are too bright, here you have the dimmer switch within easy reach. It's always inside, and there's a physical button to deactivate the steer assist of the car. And there's the button for the heated steering wheel. The steering wheel itself is nice in size, and it doesn't have too thick of a rim. It's really nice steering wheel, I must say. And over here is the button, camera button for the around view monitor. The resolution isn't all that high, but it's pretty usable. So there's the camera on its tripod at this moment. Having this button and that button over there within easy reach is proved to me that the Nissan designers really know the customer base well, and that's such a nice thing to have over there. Anyway, the front passenger compartment interior is really nice. Let's have a quick peek in the back to see what life is like for the rear passengers. When you get into the Nissan Juke, you'll notice that the door, just like the Toyota Yaris Cross, doesn't swing open all that wide, but the door opening itself is much larger, and also the seat is further back towards the rear, so I have a very nice seating position. And I will say that the cushioning and the angle of the seat back are pretty comfortable. These are real nice comfy seats. I can stow my feet under the driver's seat within my driving position. There aren't many creature comforts over here. We only have a USB A and C outlet over there, but there are no reading lights. There is no armrest or cup holders. Yeah, you do have a place for bottles over here, but it is very basic. But I will say this, just like in the front, this is a very comfortable seat. Now let's do a quick window test. I already opened it. Yeah, for adult passengers, the view towards the outside is just good, but smaller children really have to be in seat or those seat raises to allow them to have a good view towards the outside. But anyway, we now know that the interior in the front and the back is pretty comfortable. Now it's time to find out how this car drives. Let's get on the road. So, sporty exterior, comfy interior. That raises the question, how does it drive? Well, it depends, and it depends on the setting of the drive mode. That has a surprising large effect. By default, after every start, the Juke starts off in normal drive mode, and that overall, as you may expect, is a very comfortable drive mode. The car in itself, yeah, really is comfortable. The majority of the buyers of this car are not sporty drivers, and Nissan knows that. And I think that the less powerful 1-liter turbocharged engine is the sportier car to drive. It's more engaging to drive, especially with a manual 6-speed gearbox. But yeah, you buy a hybrid probably for good fuel economy, so that's best combined with a comfortable suspension setup. Speaking of which, the Juke comes, depending on the trim level, with either 17 or 19-inch wheels. This is the N Sport version, and like all the other top of the range trim levels, it comes with 19-inch wheels. The suspension setup is fairly comfortable, as I'll show you in a minute, because we have a nice bump in the road over here. There is a lot of suspension travel, and it really eats up those undulations and unevennesses in the road. Really quite nice. You really have to have those sharp and short unevennesses in the road, like expansion joints or repairs or cracks that run across the road, where this car gives a little bit of bump, but that's more the effect of the 19-inch wheels and the smaller sidewalls than it is the suspension setup. If you want this car really to be comfortable, you best choose this car with the 17-inch wheels. Those 19-inch wheels, yeah, they take up a little bit of comfort, but they offer a bit more directness in the steering. And now we're on the subject of steering. I can say this, that the steering is aimed at comfort. It's not super fast, not super direct. There is not much feedback from the car, but then again, this is a car for the general driving public, and the majority doesn't care much about sportiness in the car. They want it to be comfortable, but in comparison with the 17-inch wheels, the steering is a bit more direct. At least that's the car in the normal drive mode, because when you flick this car into sport mode, the car seems to change. And I also noticed that in the previous test of the Nissan Juke, that, well, of course, when you flick it into sports mode, the throttle response changes. That is all software, but Nissan found a real smart way to give the steering a more sportier feel. So as soon as you put this car into sport mode, the power assist decreases and the centering effect of the steering increases. So that means that you have to put in more effort around the center position of the steering wheel, and it offers more precision. You really have to put in a bit more effort, maybe a few grams of extra force, but the effect of that is that the feeling feels much sportier without the ratio actually being changed. this moment I'm a single passenger or only driver in this car. When you load up this car, when you have all seats, when you have passengers in all seats and you have a lot of luggage with you, the drive comfort and handling of this car doesn't suffer all too much from that. And you would say, well, that's pretty common with modern cars nowadays, but I can tell you this, that in cars that I recently test drove for the day job, not for a real life car review, the car was really loaded up, and that really affected the handling and especially the cornering, and that was a car in the same price class of this Nissan Juke. But I can tell you that this car is really engineered and set up for daily use and how people actually use their cars. So it does really nice on speed bumps. As said, a lot of suspension travel, nice spring comfort, and I think it's just great that Nissan chose to go down that road. On the subject of cabin noise, the engine, you can hear it, but it's not in any way annoying. Under harder acceleration, this is as worse as it gets. That's under full acceleration, and as I pointed out in the under the hood segment, you only have 4 gears that have to cover the entire speed range. So under hard acceleration, like I just did, the car shifts to 3rd gear, the engine revs up a little bit more. You can hear that the engine revs up, but the engine noise into the cabin isn't all that noisy. If you drive on the highway, you will notice that there is wind noise coming from the mirrors, and in order to change that, the Nissan engineers would have to reposition the mirrors, but that has a huge effect on the production of the car, and there's a lot of cost involved with that. So I can see why they didn't change that. They are probably aware that the car has a little bit of wind noise over there, but it's also very dependent if you have headwind or tailwind. We had a stormy week. You wouldn't say by the weather at this moment, but we had a stormy week, and with the headwinds I did notice the wind noise more than anything in the cabin. Now onto the subject of fuel consumption, because that's why you buy a hybrid, I would say. Don't know what the brochure exactly states. I believe it is in between the 4.7 and 4.9 liters per 100 kilometers, and my average fuel consumption after 5 days of driving this car is averaging out at 4.8, so that's exactly what the brochure states, and I think that's pretty good given the complexity of this hybrid powertrain and the size of the battery. And another thing that I really like, and that's something that the Nissan engineers done really well, if you're in sport mode and you lift the accelerator, there is much more regenerative braking, and that's something that I really miss in Toyotas, but Nissan just does that. So when I approach this corner over here, I don't want to brake, lift the accelerator, there's just the right amount of regenerative braking that the balance shifts to the front axle, and it gives more precision on the steering. And also shows you there's an e-pedal button that you can have single pedal driving. So let's head out this way over here, because we cannot use the on-ramp in this episode, it's closed off. We'll do a little bit of hard acceleration. Acceleration isn't all super impressive, but it really winds out the petrol engine, it shifts late, and there is noticeably more assist of the electric motors. So for what it is and for what it can do, the sport drive mode is actually fun. Now let's go back into normal drive mode. But anyway, I think I've touched upon all my talking points. Let's head out to the middle of nowhere for my final thoughts. See you in a minute. So we have an updated Nissan Juke, but Nissan didn't make any changes to the drivetrain, the suspension or the exterior design. They mainly focused on the interior and interior technology. And we have a new body color, which is very nice. Got a lot of fun response to that. Anyway, as you may have gathered from this review, I really like this car, especially for its interior. When you compare it to more modern competitors, and I especially mentioned the Toyota Yaris Cross, this interior is a much nicer place to be. If you drive a lot in your car and you could choose between the Toyota and this car, I personally would go for this car just because this interior is so much better. But there is more to a car: the suspension, the drivetrain. In comparison with more modern competitors, and with that I mean, for instance, Hyundai Bayon or the before mentioned Toyota Yaris Cross, have maybe a different, could say more dynamic drivetrain and suspension setup, where the Toyota has the more advanced and the most effective hybrid powertrain, but you also pay for that. And if you compare, for instance, equally equipped Toyota Yaris Cross with this car, the Yaris Cross is much more expensive, and for the price delta you can buy a lot of fuel, and this car has just slightly worse fuel economy. So yeah, that choice is up to you. If you want to have the most modern technology, you would go for a Toyota, but in a way this is a very cost-effective way to get good fuel economy, while the driving characteristics of this drivetrain are very nice. Yeah, you do hear the engine under acceleration, but the engine noise in the cabin isn't all intrusive. One thing where the Toyota Yaris Cross, for instance, is better is the noise insulation, the wind noise around the A-pillars and the mirrors, but as I said, that is very dependent on the wind force and wind force direction. And I think I can see why Nissan chose not to change the suspension setup of this car, so you really have something to choose between the competitors. There is a lot of competition in this market segment, and then in a way this car really stands out. Sporty exterior, very comfy interior, and also a very comfortable ride. But as I showed you in the drive segment, when you put this car into sport mode, you can have some real fun with this car without breaking the speed limits. So that's a very nice thing to have. So if you're buying this car as a private buyer, you have to pay for it yourself. I think it's good to know that you have to cut the maintenance intervals in half so you can enjoy this car long term. And also, if you're the person that buys a new car for the very first time in 15 or 20 years, if you get out of an older generation car and this is your first introduction to new car technology in terms of infotainment, connectivity and the advanced driver assist systems, be advised that this is a very nice car to start learning how these technologies work. In my opinion, Nissan has found a real nice way to make the human-machine interface work really well, even for drivers that aren't familiar with modern driver assist systems. It doesn't have a ton of warnings like the Korean brands have, and it's not overly active as in the Toyota products. Must say, Toyota safety sense can prevent a lot of minor collision damages. This car does not have that, but if you're weary for modern technology but you have to get a new car, this is a great car to begin with. This really is modern car technology, modern driver assist systems for dummies. Anyway, with that being said, I want to wrap up this real-life car review. I hope you liked following me along, and if you did, let me know by subscribing to my channel, put on notifications, give me a like, and if you have any questions or constructive feedback, let me know down below in the comment section. And also, if you want to help support the channel, you can do so by buying me a coffee. I'll leave the link for that down below in the description box. For now, I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye!